Moving with MS virtual support group. This is something that we do every month with MS Visa News and of course our supporter Viatris, so a huge thank you to them. If you don't know who I am Dr. Gretchen Hawley, a physical therapist and multiple sclerosis certified specialist, which is always a mouthful to say, but worth it because MS specialized physical therapy is very different from traditional or orthopedic physical therapy. So every month that we meet together, we talk about a different topic that can help you with tangible exercises, tips, tricks, strategies, etc., to manage your MS and to help you reach your goals. So today we are talking all about how to exercise to reduce fatigue, because fatigue is one of the most common symptoms of multiple sclerosis. And if you have a level of fatigue where exercising is challenging, then that, as you may have experienced, can oftentimes lead to not exercising at all, not moving at all, and then you can become more sedentary, get weaker, isolate yourself more, and it can be a downward spiral of events just because of that one symptom of fatigue, not to mention all of the other symptoms that can be possible. So it's really important to have strategies to improve your energy levels, which is actually possible with MS-related fatigue. So we're going to talk about lots of different things today. First, the types of fatigue, and then treatment options, and then of course exercise guidelines as well. There's two different types of fatigue. Type number one is primary fatigue. This is the type of fatigue where the only reason you are experiencing this is due to your MS, whereas secondary fatigue is because of a different reason. So secondary fatigue is the same type of fatigue that everyone in the world gets, but don't get me wrong, when you have MS, secondary fatigue is a completely different beast. So if you have a support partner, friend, family, loved one that says, oh yeah, I get fatigued too, it is completely different. They do not know. I don't have MS. I do not know what this feels like. This is something so specific to people with MS. And if anyone tries, it's one of my biggest pet peeves when someone's like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Because no, you don't. It's completely different when you have MS, but the reason might be the same. So secondary fatigue could be caused from medications, from a side effect. It could be caused from temperature changes, if you have heat intolerance or cold intolerance, or seasonal change intolerance, as I like to call it, where even if you do better in the cooler weather, the change from hot to cold could put you in a fatigue flare, or the change from cold to warm could put you in that fatigue flare. Pain can cause fatigue. Weakness in muscles can cause fatigue. Nutrition can cause fatigue. Not being hydrated, depression, staying up late at night, not getting enough sleep, exercise or activity. These are all things that can cause secondary fatigue. And it's possible to also have both primary and secondary. So let's first talk about treatments for fatigue. And this goes for both primary fatigue and secondary fatigue. So the first approach, and we'll talk about each of these, but the first is medical. This is something often like medication, supplements, often something that you're ingesting. And then the second is psychosocial or behavioral. These are things like cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness-based stress reduction, energy conservation, etc. The reason why I wrote vacuum versus pottery here is because there was a study that was done not too long ago, a couple years ago, that had a bunch of people with MS who experienced fatigue. And basically what they found from this study is that when someone was vacuuming, aka doing a chore, just something that they felt like they had to do to keep up with their home, so they're in a standing position moving around, that versus standing and doing pottery. So pretty similar, obviously not the same task, but what they were looking at was doing a chore versus doing something fun and enjoyable and a hobby, both standing. that the fatigue was reported higher when it was vacuum versus pottery. And again, vacuuming is a bit different. You do have to move a little bit more than when you're standing doing pottery. But still, the idea here was, okay, is there some psychosocial or behavioral component to fatigue if when you're doing something enjoyable, even if you're standing for a while, that fatigue isn't as bad as something that is more of a chore. And then the last, and what we'll also give examples for today, is physical, which is exercise. I also see in the chat, if you guys have questions along the way, please feel free to ask. I see someone is asking, I just got prescribed modafinil for fatigue. Yep, we're going to be getting into that. What is that YouTube link above? The YouTube link above is the Moving with MS support group link with all of the recordings. So it's on YouTube at the MS Views and News page. I love that you said no, you don't. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so treatments for fatigue. Today we're mostly going to be focusing on the last two. However, I do believe I have a slide. Oh shoot, I took the slide out. Before we go to those last two, because I do want to touch on some of the treatments as well, is, as someone just said in the chat, modafinil is a big one for fatigue. Tizanidine can sometimes be used for fatigue. It depends on what the reason for your fatigue is. So if you have spasticity and that's causing your fatigue, then you might be on something like baclofen, or you might get Botox. And of course, the goal is to reduce the spasticity, but also reduce your fatigue. Some ADHD type medications can be used for fatigue as well. Some people, there's no official studies on, I guess like from pharmaceutical companies, you could say, on this, but there's some people that report that their fatigue is better from CBD. So again, these are more so things that your neurologist is going to prescribe. The reason that we're not necessarily focusing on them today is because those are more so for primary fatigue. When you have primary fatigue, which again, there's no other reason than having MS. You didn't stay up late at night. You didn't over-exercise or move too much. You didn't eat really unhealthy. It's just due to MS and the disease process of MS. That's the kind that typically requires medication. Whereas secondary fatigue, which is our primary focus today, is there's usually an exercise component and behavioral component that we can work on to improve fatigue. But again, if you have both, then it might be a mix of both. Someone is asking, Lori's asking, does anyone know what code their doctors use to prescribe modafinil? I have to argue with my neuro every time I need a refill. I am not sure, but if someone else knows, comment and I can read it out loud. Kevin is asking, is caffeine okay for fatigue? This is probably going to depend on your specific situation, other medications that you might be on, and if caffeine is okay to along with those other medications. Generally speaking, I would assume that it would be okay, but you always want to make sure that you're having caffeine at the right times of day and around the right meals. For example, research shows that it's not great to have caffeine first thing in the morning, that you should always have something to eat first and then caffeine, because it will spike your cortisol and that can put you in fight or flight mode and inflammation mode. So you'd want to eat something first and then have caffeine. Also with caffeine, you probably shouldn't have it. I believe they say 3 p.m. For most people, not having it after 3 p.m. With that said, I know lots of people who after 1 p.m. they can't have it because then they'll be up at night. So it's a little bit different for everyone. There are research papers on modafinil for helping nerve connection. Yes. I've just switched MS specialists and they immediately prescribed modafinil and a sleep study. Yeah, sleep studies can be great. I've been fatigued all year. Yeah. So with fatigue, researchers used to say that up to 80% of people with MS experience fatigue. Now they say that up to 90% of people with MS experience some levels of MS-related fatigue. So it's a lot. It's definitely something to be, definitely a discussion that needs to be had. I see Gwen says matcha tea contains L-theanine, which is like a regulator for the caffeine in matcha, easier on the body, heart, etc. Yes, I learned that about matcha, that it's a healthier type, if you will, of caffeine a few years ago, and I've been having matcha. I was having it daily. Now it's about probably weekly or a few times a week because of that. Thank you for sharing that, Gwen. Okay, so let's touch on what you can do, because those medications can be really helpful, and it's definitely a conversation to have with your doctor, explaining things like, what does your fatigue feel like? How long does it last? When is it better? When is it worse? Does anything make it better or worse? And from that discussion, they can decide, okay, a medication would be helpful or wouldn't be, and of the ones available, these are the ones that might be best for you. But then there's also things that you can do on your own at home that can help with both primary and secondary fatigue. The first is behavioral. So these are things that you can just do every day. Maybe it's once a day, maybe it's throughout the day, but check these things. What do you feel your core temperature might be at? Now, this is a really tricky one, because if you know that you have heat intolerance, then this might be easier for you. But heat intolerance is when your core temperature increases by at least half of a degree. And some newer studies actually show 1/4 of a degree, which is so small. But if it increases by half or 1/4 of a degree, then any of your symptoms can worsen, including fatigue. Similarly, with cold intolerance, if your temperature lowers by half of a degree or 1/4 of a degree, it can make any symptom worsen. So if you know that you have heat intolerance or cold intolerance, this might be your first guess and first attempt at improving or reducing your fatigue. But 1/2 of a degree and 1/4 of a degree is so slight that even if you're unaware that you have heat intolerance or cold intolerance because you've never experienced it before, this is something that might be happening that is an easy fix that you could implement right away. And I hate using that word fix, but in this case, it is pretty much a quick fix. So if you think that if your fatigue is flaring and you think that there is the even slightest possibility that your core temperature could have increased or decreased by half or 1/4 of a degree, then try to heat it up or cool it down. If you think that it's increased, maybe take a layer off. If you've got a sweater on, take the sweater off. Maybe sip some cold water as you are doing whatever it is that you're doing. Use it as a hydration reminder. If you are moving and exercising, calm yourself down, take a breather, maybe get a cooling towel and put that on you. If it's the opposite and you might be getting a little bit too chilly, put a sweater on, put a blanket on your lap. So checking with your core temperature is the first thing that I recommend anytime fatigue or any symptom seems to be worsening, because again, it can be that quick fix. Usually within 15-20 minutes, that symptom is starting to lessen because your core temperature is coming back to your neutral zone. Stress levels, much easier said than done. And the goal here isn't necessarily get rid of stress, it's just to reduce stress, especially this time of year. If you feel like you're checking in with yourself, your fatigue is feeling worse, and you check in with your mind and your mind is focusing on a million different things, can you do any type of practice to reduce your stress? Maybe a breathing practice through your nostrils or belly breathing. Maybe it's my favorite, coloring in a coloring book. Maybe it's sitting, well, it's snowing here now near Buffalo, New York, but can you sit outside and get fresh air? What have you done in the past that has helped lower your stress levels, and start implementing those things? Exercise. Exercise, I know this sounds counterintuitive and we're going to get into the specifics in a bit here, but exercise, when it's done lightly, and some research says mild to moderate, can actually improve your energy and reduce fatigue. But if you're overdoing it, that can make your fatigue worse. So checking in on that. Sleep. So are you sleeping at night? If not, what can we do to address the reasons why you're not sleeping well? Is it because you're getting up to go to the bathroom? If so, can we see a urologist and decide why is that happening? Or see a pelvic floor physical therapist to see why that might be happening and make some changes there. If it's because you're stressed and you're ruminating thoughts and focusing on other things, how can we reduce your stress right before bed? Is it because of nutrition or hydration, whatever it might be? Let's focus on those things. But also, could you take a nap? For some people with MS, naps, 20 minutes or less, do wonders. For other people, it doesn't do a thing. So it's different for everyone, but give it a try and see if that works for you. Nutrition. How is your nutrition? For a lot of people, even MS aside, when your nutrition isn't the best, your fatigue is one of the first things to rear its nasty head. So checking in with, are you getting healthy foods? Are you getting fruits and vegetables and fermented foods and water? Are you staying hydrated? And then medications. Have you added another medication where it could be the side effect? Fatigue could be the side effect. Or is that medication combined with another medication you're taking causing fatigue? So these are just things to check in with yourself, see what's going on, because each of these things has a solution that we can use to ideally reduce fatigue. Vicki says, taking a nap is how I deal with MS fatigue. In fact, I just took a nap before this webinar. Perfect example. How to test for stress levels. My watch says I'm in stress all the time, need something to compare against. Yeah, that's a really good point. So there's like watches, the Oura Ring, there's people or things that you can use to tell you how stressed you are, but it goes based off of specific numbers like your heart rate or heartbeat. I'm blanking on the other things that test your sleep. But if it's saying that you're always in stress mode, while that might be true and something to keep in the back of our minds, what I would mostly look at is, even though it says you're always in that stress mode, what is your normal heartbeat that it's saying is in stress mode? Is, like, let's just say it's normally 90, and normal might be 75, 80, something like that. If it's always 90, even though that's stress, if that's your norm, then I would say that's probably okay to stay around there, but you do want to be mindful of, is it going up to 100 or is it going up to 95, and using that as your marker of, okay, this for me is a little bit too high. Let me try to do some things to lower my stress. Get a mobility towel, helps me dry off faster, less fatigue. When you dry off from a shower or swimming, recommended. Funny you mentioned that, Margie. I have one right over there. That was actually, it's one of my gifts that you'll see on my annual holiday, MS holiday gift guide this year. Someone gifted me the towel, great present that helps with fatigue. Yeah, actually, because I have it, let me show it to you. So it's a towel that has loops that you can hold on to, that it's loops across the whole towel, just to make it easier to hold on to. If you don't have great grip, you can put your hands through them. But then at the bottom, I don't know what material it is, but it's weighted. So you can kind of see that crease down there. There's weights in there so that when you drop it down and you can pull it up, it just makes it really easy, quick, effective way to dry your body without having to bend down, twist, turn. And as Margie's saying too, it can help with fatigue as well. Okay, which is a perfect segue into energy conservation. So energy conservation is one of the the best, but can be the hardest things that we can do to preserve the energy that we do have. So here's just a couple of ideas. There's so many out there. But one, as you can see down at the bottom, avoid unnecessary tasks. So this is one where instead of drying the dishes, you just let them air dry. If you're cooking a meal or brushing your teeth or washing your hands, sit when you're doing those things instead of standing. A terry cloth robe, the reason I have that one on there, it was before I found out about the mobility towel. The terry cloth robe, it dries you off as you're just sitting around resting after your shower or moving around after your shower without you having to go through that step of actually drying off your body. But the mobility towel could also be another option here. So thinking about your day from the moment you get up to the moment that you go to bed, what things that you're doing could be done simpler or in a different way so that it uses less energy. Going back up to the top here, splitting up activities throughout the day or chores throughout the day or throughout the week or throughout the month, making a schedule and organizing your day, your week, your month. There's different personality types out there, but one thing for a lot of personality types that can help conserve energy, both physically and mentally, is having a schedule and organizing your days, your weeks, month. Even if you've been someone in the past where you never had to schedule anything or you never had to organize your day, you might be that person now. And that also, just to reiterate, physical fatigue and mental fatigue are two different things, but they both can cause, but mental fatigue can also cause physical fatigue, that it manifests physically. So we want to be taking care of our brains and our mental health and stress as well. Using assistive devices to help. This is something that a lot of people fear because they assume if they use assistive devices, they're just going to continue to get weaker, which is not the case if you're using it in the right way. But assistive devices, this could be mobility aids, it could be rollators, it could be a cane, it could be trekking poles, it could be gadgets that can help. So they have gadgets where it makes opening bottles a lot easier. They have pens and pencils that instead of just a small skinny little pen or pencil, they are thicker, so they're easier to grasp. They have pens. Do I have them in here? I do. Another little preview of my MS Holiday gift guide this year. But they have pens that have weights in them. So the weight can make it easier to coordinate the movement. So thinking about things like that, long-handled brushes to wash your back or wash your hair without having to get your arm all the way back there or up there. The mobility towel is another great example of a gadget. There's so many things, so many gadgets that can be used for anything and everything throughout the day. There is an occupational therapist, two, that I really love their Instagram accounts. I believe they both have YouTube as well. One, it'll be easy to remember her name. Her name is Cheryl Crow, C-H-E-R-Y-L, Crow. She's an occupational therapist that shares tons of different gadgets like this that can be helpful. And then the other one is Lindsay, I'm forgetting her last name. Her on YouTube as well as Instagram, her company is called Equip Me OT. I'll type it in the chat. Equip, almost like equipment, E-Q-U-I-P, Me OT. Those are two people, both occupational therapists, who share tons of gadgets that can help. Meditation and mindfulness, again, this could be breathing through your nose, it could be belly breathing, it could be coloring in a book, something to reduce the stress of what's happening in your life at that time. And then again, monitoring your exercise, especially if you've never had an issue with exercise before. So often, I've been working with people who have MS for over a decade now, and so almost yearly, I have a bunch of patients who have something that never used to bother them before, even though they've had MS for 20 years, and now it's starting to bother them. And it always catches them off guard because it never bothered them. Heat intolerance is a big one. where they're noticing worsened symptoms when their core temperature is increasing. I'll mention the idea of heat intolerance and they'll say, oh no, I've never had that before. I know it's common, but I don't have it. Well, MS can change and you might have that now. If exercise never used to bother you before, the specific way that you're exercising might be bothering you now. It's not a bad thing. It's just something to be aware of so that we can tweak it. Using an Instapot and air fryer. Yes, love that one. Thank you for sharing. Faster, cooler cooking, less fatigue, cleanup is a breeze, recommended. Oh, I love that one. How much energy do I use just thinking of the best way to accomplish my next task? Yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing about scheduling and organizing your day is that at first, it might cause stress. It might be, if you're not used to doing it, it might take a lot of time. But the more that you do it, the more you'll realize, okay, last time that cleaning the bathroom was on my to-do list, it took me 2 days to be able to do that, of 30 minutes each of those days. So then the next time that's on your list, you don't even have to think about it. You'll just know, okay, let me schedule this on 2 different days. I just started using ChatGPT to help me draft letters. Yes, or letters or ideas I had but can't articulate like I used to, and the AI seems to know what I want to say. Yeah, absolutely. I used weighted silverware for tremors. Yeah, just like these weighted pens, they have weighted forks, spoons, knives. They even have weighted knives and spoons for like actual cooking as well. Okay, so for energy conservation, the main thing that I like to share here, in addition to all of these, is to rest, but ideally try to make it guilt-free. I don't know about you, but for me, anytime that I'm choosing to rest, maybe it's because I'm sick or I'm feeling run down, whatever it is, I feel so guilty. I feel like I should be exercising instead. I should be working instead. I should be doing the dishes. I should be doing X, Y, Z. And what I've noticed personally is that when I'm done resting, when I've been having those thoughts, I don't actually feel physically or mentally rested. But when I allow myself to rest for the same amount of time, guilt-free, none of those shoulds, or when those shoulds pop into my mind, I just let them go by and they're nothing that I stick on to. I feel so much more rested. So when you rest, I would highly encourage you to try to feel not guilty or less guilty about it. Our bodies, even without MS, but especially with MS, need rest. It's literally productive. I know it feels unproductive, but it is productive for our bodies, for our muscles, for our brains, our neural pathways. Resting doesn't have to mean napping. It can, of course, but it could be coloring in a coloring book, as we've talked about, focusing on breathing, a walking meditation or a seated meditation. It could be guided by something that you're listening to or just something that you're doing on your own and you're trying to clear your mind. It could be whatever has worked for you or something that you haven't tried that you're trying for the first time. Okay, so physical. So we're actually going to do some movements here, but before we do, here's some tips from MS research. So the type of exercise that has been found to be the most successful for fatigue is light exercise. Again, some research says mild to moderate, but what I've been seeing lately is more so on that light or mild side. So when you're exercising with any of the examples we do today, it should feel light or mild for you. That's going to be different for every person. So you might be moving at a different speed. You might do a different number of repetitions, but what you should be having as a goal when you're exercising is it should feel light or it should feel mild for you. Again, that's going to be different for every person. So the specific types of exercise that have been found to be helpful for fatigue is aerobic exercise. So this means increasing your heart rate, which again might sound counterintuitive, but this is what research shows. Resistance training. So this could be something with weights or resistance bands, and aquatic exercise. So This could mean actually swimming. It could be doing exercises in the water, but something in the water. Arm movements, which I'll give you a bunch of demonstrations, and seated exercises. So when you're fatigued, if you are exercising in a standing position, if you're able to, that's great. But for a lot of people, that can make fatigue worse because your body is focusing on strengthening and balance at the same time, instead of just one thing, just the strengthening. So by sitting down and exercising, you're taking balance out of the equation, meaning your body can focus on just one thing instead of 2+ things. So again, we'll do some demonstrations. And then also rest breaks. So rest breaks can be different for each person and even the same person on different days, but you should be resting between your exercises at least 30 seconds, but anywhere up to 5 minutes. Now, if it's the latter, if it's that 5-minute mark, you do need to keep in mind that your whole exercise routine will likely take you a lot longer because you're exercising 5 minutes between every exercise. So just keep that in mind as you're planning your routine. Or instead of trying to do a routine all at once, you could choose what 6 exercises are in your routine. You can do one in the morning, one in the later morning, one before lunch, one after lunch, one mid-afternoon, and one before dinner. That's 6, just spread out throughout the day. But again, exercising with fatigue throughout the day is shown in MS research to be just as effective as exercising all at once. And I like to share that as much as possible because so often, if we feel like we can't exercise for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 45 or an hour, we feel like it's not worth it. But it absolutely is. Research shows that throughout the day, just here and there, small things is just as effective as all at once. General movement versus exercise. This is something that's really important to understand because a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot, every person has an idea in their mind of what exercise is. It's based on what we've done in the past, what we were taught growing up from our parents, from physical education teachers, if you were on a sports team, whatever it might be. We all have our own definition of what exercise means. And that is a form of exercise. Whatever your answer is, that is a form of exercise. But we can forget that general movement or any movement is also exercise. So if you are picturing what exercise means to you and you can't do that anymore, just know that that's just one type of exercise. There's so many other types of movement and exercise that also count as exercise, including just moving around your home, getting up to go to the bathroom, standing up and sitting down from the toilet, from your bed, from the couch, standing to cook a meal, standing to brush your teeth. There's so many movements. If you have stairs in your home, that also, of course, counts. So be thinking about those things. The only thing that doesn't count as exercise is sitting and relaxing, so every muscle is just fully relaxed. Anything other than that is a form of movement and exercise, even just sitting up tall like this. I'm using my core right now to stay up tall away from the back of my chair. So if this is the first time you're hearing of this concept, I'd highly encourage you to expand your definition of what exercise means. Moving slow and moving less, which we'll do some examples in a second here. I see Margie says, a man in Scotland posted on Facebook that he used to work building hiking trails and paths. He used a wheelbarrow to carry gravel, rocks, railroad ties, shovel, pick, etc. He said that he was more tired after taking a shower than when he worked all day building hiking trails. That says it all for me. Yeah, and that's such a great point too, because all movement and all exercise is not created equal. So you could get really tired from that definition of what you have as exercise. You might be able to do it, but you're just super fatigued after. But if you exercise in a different way or do a different thing, then it might feel okay for you. In this specific case of this Scotland man being more tired after a shower, that also could be due to heat intolerance. A lot of people don't realize that heat intolerance is when your core temperature rises from any reason, not just the temperature outside, but if you're taking a hot or even a warm shower, your heat intolerance is going to skyrocket. When you're exercising, your core temperature can rise. So again, sipping your water, keeping a cooling pack on, something to cool your core temperature down. I've been going to aquatherapy and I love it. I just got hip to the Rika water sneakers. Ooh, very cool. For heat intolerance, what temperature pool do you recommend? To my knowledge, I think the number that I've seen has been 86 degrees or less. With that said, of course, there's always the disclaimer of everyone is different. There's some people with MS where 86 is too high, but 80 might be okay, or 82 might be okay. There's other people where 86 is fine, but 92 is too high. So I'd start with that 86 and then go from there, see how that feels for you. Easier, less fatiguing to spread exercises throughout the day while you sit at the computer, small bicycle pedaling, small hand weights, TheraBands. Absolutely. My favorite trick of the trade for people with MS trying to exercise, because kind of a tangent here, but a worthwhile one. When you have MS, yes, general movement is great. Yes, exercise is great. All movement and exercise is great. But when you're trying to improve specific areas of weakness, it's really important to strengthen those specific areas. So you're not going to be doing just general movement or general exercise. You're going to be doing an exercise for that specific muscle, group, or even individual muscle. And that can be fatiguing. But if you're doing them in small chunks throughout the day and you're giving yourself that rest time, oftentimes it's actually pretty manageable. So yeah, love that. Okay, moving on. So how to exercise with fatigue. Again, I'm saving the demonstration for the end so we can all do it together. But ways to modify. Number one, fewer repetitions in sets. So if you are used to doing 10 repetitions, 3 sets, maybe you do 10 repetitions, 2 sets, or 7 repetitions, 3 sets. Or 7 repetitions, 2 sets. It's up to you how you want to do it, but having fewer repetitions and sets overall. Number 2, which this might sound contradictory, but moving faster. Oftentimes, moving slower is harder for fatigue because it makes you use that muscle over a longer period of time. If I'm trying to bend my elbow and I'm going really, really, really slow, it's going to take me probably 5 seconds, if not more, to bend all the way, and then 5 more seconds to straighten it. That's 10 seconds total of using my bicep. But if I go faster, I just did that in less than 1 second. So it's often easier to move faster because it doesn't require your muscle to work or stay active for as long. Don't hold as long. Again, if I'm trying to bend my elbow, and at the end of the movement, I'm trying to really squeeze and hold, and then release. That hold is an active muscle. So if I'm trying to hold for 3 seconds, that's going to be a whole lot harder and more fatiguing than holding for 1 second, or even half a second, or no seconds. Next is don't lift as high or don't put as much effort in, don't move as much. So again, with this one, if normally I try to bend as much as I can and really try to bend, that's going to be a lot harder than if I'm trying to just bend halfway. So pick what works for you on that day. And then less weight or no weight. I often, if you're in the missing link, you know, I often use no weight at all because when you add a weight, it makes your muscles work harder, which can be good in some situations, but when you have weakness, those muscles are, due to MS, are likely weak enough to a point where if you do add weight too soon, the other muscles around it that are already stronger are going to overcompensate. We don't want that to happen. We want that weakest muscle to get stronger. And one of the best ways to do that is to not make it more challenging than it needs to be. Don't add weight, don't add a resistance band. So these are just a few ways to modify an exercise. You can choose just one of these You can choose some, multiples, all of them, whatever works for you. Is going to the bathroom considered exercise when using a wheelchair? Yeah, going to the bathroom, regardless of what you're using to get there, absolutely. If you're on a wheelchair, do you have to slide transfer to and from? Do you have to do like a squat pivot transfer? Regardless, that's movement, and that does still count. Okay, next up is types of exercise. So when you're fatigued, especially if you have the type like primary fatigue, that can often feel like you're so drained that opening your eyes feels really hard to do. If that's the case, then think about different types of exercise that are available to you. Strengthening is one, and if you're going to do strengthening, again, as we talked about earlier, stay seated. But stretching might be better for you that day. Balance training might be better for, and you can do that seated as well, might be better for you that day. Anything seated mobility might be better for you that day. So if you normally exercise standing or in the pool or at the gym, just think about these other types of movements that might be more accessible. Oftentimes doing something that is easier can improve your fatigue. Also considering where to exercise. You can exercise from a bed. If you're in my online programs, you know that we've got full like 30-minute exercise classes where I'm literally in my bed doing an exercise routine with you guys. There's so many things that you can do in bed or from a couch, whether you're sitting on the edge of a couch or legs are full up, supported on the couch. There's exercises that you can do in those positions. You can exercise on a kitchen chair. You can exercise from the toilet. One exercise that I like to do throughout the day, especially for my patients with MS, is when you're done going to the bathroom and you're dressed up and everything, stand up and sit down 5 times. That's from your bathroom, you know, so it doesn't have to just be outside or walking or at a gym. So general rule of thumb is that 2 hours of fatigue after an exercise routine is normal. But if you are still feeling fatigued, or honestly even any symptom, more than 2 hours afterwards, if it hasn't started to lessen, then whatever you did was too much for you that day. So the next time you exercise, start monitoring those things that we talked about earlier. How many exercises did you do? How many repetitions did you do? How many sets did you do? How long did you exercise for? And start modifying those things. Okay, I believe this is my last slide. It's my demonstration slide. So I'm going to, I'll keep this up for a few more seconds, but I'm going to pull this down so that I'm bigger on your screen, and we'll do these together. So we're just going to do a few of each one because I want you to be able to have a lot of different ideas. And just know that these are just a few. There's so many exercises for fatigue that you can do, pretty much any exercise, but use those modifications we talked about earlier, and that can work as well. So we're gonna review these ones together. I see walking is my go-to exercise, especially now that it's not so hot in Georgia. Yeah, walking's great. Do you do physical therapy virtually? I do aqua group therapy 3 times a week, but no other PT. Without a PT, I forget to do the at-home exercises. So I'm not currently seeing patients virtually. I do, the most common way to work with me right now is through my online membership called The Missing Link. That's where I'm checking in with everyone in our Facebook community. I give you a specific guide that tells you exactly what exercises to do each day. There's exercise classes as well. There's that personalized approach. You can ask your questions, things like that. Okay, so I don't see any other questions right now, so I'm going to, here's the Q&A form if you have any, or slide if you wanted to know where to find me. But I'm gonna stop sharing my slides. We'll do some of these examples of exercises and go from there. All right, so I'm gonna scoot back here. And we're just going to practice some of these. So if you're up for it, you can practice with me right now. I hope you do. That would be fun. But you can also just keep these in the back of your mind for later. So what I want you to do is get comfortable. Just relax in the back of your chair. When you're fatigued, I want you to picture, if you're not experiencing this today, that's amazing, but I want you to picture a really high fatigue day for you. These ideally should be exercises that you could do even on those days. So you're going to be relaxed. You could choose to do these exercises sitting up tall, but for today, we're going to be relaxed. So you're sitting relaxed. You're going to close your hands just loosely. You're not going to squeeze, just loosely close. And you're just going to do some forward punches. So again, I'm just going to kind of run through a bunch of different examples here, but you could just stay here at forward punches. If this is too hard, you'll notice from this side that I'm punching at my shoulder height. I could instead punch down towards my knees. That's going to be a little bit easier, a little bit less fatiguing for my shoulders. Another arm one that you could do is upper body jumping jacks. Whether you come all the way up like this, or even just halfway, or you just stay down low, doesn't matter what you do, but some level of coming out to the side and up, and then coming back down. You could do the same as our first one, but you could add a little bit of a twist. This is going to activate your core muscles a little bit more. So you're just adding that twist. You could do some arm pumps. You could do some punching bags, some rolling, pretending you're punching that bag that's hanging in front of you. And you could also go the reverse way, like that. You could reach up overhead and come back down, maybe one arm at a time, and then the other. So again, we're just trying to find any motion possible that is motion. Motion is the goal when we're really, really fatigued. So those are just a few examples of arm movements that you can do. Another option that was on that list was seated reaching. This could mean sitting, again, towards the back of your chair, but you're going to reach forward and then come back. Reach forward and come back. You could reach to the side and come back. You could reach diagonally forward. There's no rhyme or reason or right or wrong, just reaching in different directions. This is a core-based exercise. You can reach down towards the ground. It's going to be one that is great for core strengthening as well as balance training and weight shifting. So just reaching, and again, you'll notice my hands are kind of remaining down here. You're typically not going to reach up. That's going to be harder for your shoulder muscles, but you can still reach in those same directions, just with your arms a little bit lower. Next one is marching. This can be done lying down as well, but from a seated position, you just try to lift one leg up and then the other. This is going to be easier if you can recline more. So the more you're reclined, the easier it can be to lift your legs. Now, this is a really challenging one. So I'm lifting pretty high right now just so you can see my legs, but just know that when you're doing that one, it's totally okay for you to see no movement, but just feel tightness in your hip flexors. These are the muscles that would be tightening. So that's where you'd ideally want to feel those muscles tensing. Sit to stands was one on that list. So again, you're sitting, this could be on the toilet, it could be on a chair. Try to not use a wheeled chair like I'm using. I just happen to have it in my office. But you'll scoot towards the edge of your chair, knees are nice and wide, shift your body weight forward and stand up, and then shift and come down. If this is too hard, then you don't have to come all the way down or put a pillow under your butt so you don't have as far of a way to go. Or when you're standing up, you just don't go down as low. Down and up. While you are standing or seated, this is kind of similar to our reaching exercise, but weight shifting. So your focus is, can you shift all of your weight or the majority of it onto this side of your hip? And then can you shift it onto this side of your hip? And you're just practicing that shifting of your weight side to side. For this one, I do like to be away from the back of my chair. It just feels a little bit easier to do versus relaxed, but you could also do it relaxed as well. Another exercise on that list was standing, just simply standing with ideally good posture, but we're not being picky when we're fatigued. Any posture would be fine, but just standing, stand, Nothing fancy, just stay here. How long can you stay here for? 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes. Standing is a great exercise. Then we talked earlier about stretching. We're running a little late now, so I'm not going to demonstrate lots of different stretches, but I'll mention them. Some great stretches to do are things like hamstring stretches, calf stretches, even just upper body, like pulling one arm, trying to keep that shoulder low, doing some neck stretches to relieve some tension. Any type of stretching can feel really good on fatigue days, and if one reason your fatigue is flaring that day is due to tight muscles, stretching can feel even better. And then last but not least is breathing. We mentioned this a lot throughout our talk today. There's so many different types of breathing. Nostril breathing is one where you're focusing, you close one nostril, you breathe in, then close that one, open the other, and breathe out. And then repeat on the other side. Breathe in, close it, open the other one, and exhale, and repeat. That's nostril breathing. There's belly breathing, where you put your hands on your belly, and as you inhale, your belly expands out. As you exhale, your belly comes in. But there's lots of different ones. So find something that works for you when your fatigue is flaring. You know, it's going to be different for every person, as I keep mentioning, but finding something that works for you, and then write that down somewhere so that on the next day that you're feeling that level of fatigue, you have a plan. You don't even have to think about what to do because you have this plan of this is what you do on your highest fatigue days. When I'm working with my clients, I often like to have 3 different plans: an exercise plan for a high fatigue day, an exercise plan for a low fatigue day, and then an exercise plan for somewhere in the middle. The fatigue is there, it's not low, but it's not high. That way, regardless of the type of day you're having, you're kind of reducing that mental fatigue by having to think about, what should I do today? How should I modify this? Okay, so I know that was a lot. Let me see what questions you guys have here. Anything I do outside of the water seems to hurt. Yeah, and you know, there's also, this is a whole nother topic, but there's also the component of orthopedic issues in addition to multiple sclerosis. So if there's pain, which we had a whole webinar last month on pain, but if there's pain with certain things in certain environments, also recommended to see a physical therapist in person to see why that might be happening. Can you please put this, oh, the slides of where to find me back up? Yes, let me, there we go. So missinglink.com is my website, so you'll find the program I was talking about, you'll find my book, lots of different ways to work with me, information, my blog, etc. I'm on Instagram, I also have a podcast, I have a YouTube channel, I have a, as I mentioned, a book or audiobook. There's lots of different ways to find me, but these are just a few. What is the best seated exercise for core strength? It's going to depend on what your core strength currently is. And I know this sounds simple and maybe a little crazy. One of the best seated exercises for core strength is sitting up tall, away from the back of your chair with your core muscles activated. So you're purposely trying to, the exercise is called bracing, but you pull your core muscles in using your belly muscles, pulling your belly button in towards your spine, and stay here. If that's, which is really hard to do. It sounds easy, but if you're doing it correctly, it's pretty challenging. Once you're there, then you can practice leaning back and coming back up. Just a little bit, but you're keeping your core tight the whole time. It's like a seated crunch. So that's one that is in my programs that I give to lots of different people because it's such a great starting point. Thanks for the modifications on marching. I cannot lift my leg while seated upright, but was able to do it when I leaned back. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love talking about that reclined version. For most people with MS, if you're sitting up tight, nice and tall, your best posture, and you're trying to do that marching exercise, it's really, really hard. But if you recline backwards, it can feel easier. Thank you so much. Please put more of stretching for spasms. Yeah, we actually have a full session on spasticity, which includes lots of stretching. I'm not sure when that one is coming up next, but we do have a whole webinar on that. Someone's saying thank you, you're welcome. Did not know I was supposed to exercise when I have high fatigue days. Yeah, for a lot of people, when you exercise on high fatigue days, it can actually reduce the level of fatigue you're feeling. With that said, another alternative is not to exercise. That is absolutely okay. So this would just be a solution if you are looking to do some type of movement on those days. All right, that's all I've got for you guys. Have a great rest of your day or evening, depending on what time zone you're in, and I will see you next month. Bye, everyone.